Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCG live codes, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code Omnipoke. For today's video, we're going to be taking a look at both the Gdansk and Brisbane Regional Championship results. We're still trundling on through with Mega Evolution, and there's Vegas and Buenos Aires coming up next weekend, as well as LAIC on the horizon as well. So still plenty to look at, some really interesting asymmetrical cuts as well, with a surprising lack of Gardevoir, certainly in the top 8s at the very least. So going to be going over the metagame for both of these, and also looking at the updated deck lists and how the meta is changing. Let's start off with the overall metagame in Brisbane then. 617 players, pretty good actually for an Aussie event. That's more than their previous IC, the last one they had at the very least. So let's have a look at the overall. Well, actually, I'm going to quickly group the Guardies just to get a better picture. 16.9% of Gardevoir as the most popular deck in the room, and when you ungroup, you can see that the most popular was the straight build of Gardevoir, with the 5.6% for the jelly build. Then we have the Dusk, the only other deck above 10%. Then we have Charizard at the 8.7, a little bit above this little cluster of 6%ers, the Grim, the Ceruledge, and the Gholdengo. Then we have the Mega Absol box at 5%, Terra box at 4%, Raging Bolt really starting to fall off. And then we have some 2%ers in the Cynthia's Chomp and the Zoroark. Just doing a quick group once again. The Gholdengo almost reached the 10% if you combine the straight builds, the Lunar Rock, and the Cash in Hand build as well. But yeah, I think it still seems to be the most popular decks in the room are the Guardies, the Pots, and the Dengos as our sort of top 3. Then we have the sort of other stage 2s in the mix. Ceruledge also in there as well, but still lacking some really great performances, I would say, on the whole. Let's have a look at the conversion then for our top decks. And you can see that the regular Gardevoir had a far worse time than the Jelly build. And I think, again, just looking at matchups, the Jelly build is very favoured. Almost 65% into the straight build. And I think that's a big reason why the Jelly build is doing so well, is that you're favoured into the mirror, and when that's the most popular deck in the room, that's a good thing to have. So an easy reason to see why the Jelly build was performing a little bit better than the straight build of Gardevoir. Regular Gardevoir, in terms of matchups, the most awkward ones, Charizard Grim makes sense, and then the Jelly build is the worst matchups. Gholdengo also looking actually awful. Wow, that's surprisingly really, really poor. Like, I know it's not great, but I would have thought the straight build with the pressure of the single prizes would have been close. But I do know that a lot of Dengos have space for both the Picnic and the Scrapper at the moment, so maybe that's the thing holding it back. But yeah, that's the sort of big winner in conversion, the Jelly build of Gardevoir, but also the Absol box as well. And I think comparing this to Gdansk, there was far less Gholdengo, and that's the scariest matchup for Absol. Like, if we look at the matchup data, into Gholdengo, that's by far, like, your worst mainstream matchup by far, right? So the fact that there was less of it in Brisbane kind of opened the door for Absol to have, A, good conversion, but B, a number of them in the asymmetrical cut as well. So a calculated risk for the tournament, and Absol's in this strange spot where, when we first saw it come onto the scene, the Cornerstone was a great check to the Gholdengo. Now the Gholdengos have evolved, so they have either Mega Lucario or Mawile or even Erica's Invitation to help deal with this matchup. So now the Mega Absol has to go for like some weird supporter stuff like Zerosix and Airy and hope that sniping enough superiors wins you the game. And sometimes that can happen, but the matchup is far less solid than it used to be. So Absol seems like it's going to continue to be this like calculated risk deck, and that's, I think, fine in the format actually. When Gholdengo is, between that 6 to 10% range, I would say it's something that any deck can do. And we'll actually have a look, especially with the Gdansk results, actually with both results to be fair, that it's okay to take that risky matchup into the field right now, because so few things are actually above 10% anyway. That, like, yes, you can have this glaring weak matchup, have some ways to beat it in the best case scenario, but ultimately, like, accept the L and hope to hit it like less than 3 times to have still ultimately like a really good tournament. And I think that's why this format is so intriguing, is that a lot of it comes down to your overall matchup run.
because the metagame like is so spread out that you could hit it 0 times, you could hit it 3 or 4 times, just luck of the draw. But then also just like stick to your consistent list, stick to well spread out tech cards rather than individual techs for just like one matchup, unless it really is going to be like just Pult or Guardy, because those are really the only two that I think it's like worthwhile. Instead, having the more varied tech inclusions seem to be the right choices for decks. And as we'll see with some of the deck lists, we're going to see that sort of same list popping up over and over again, where you're still employing your strategy and saying that being as consistent as possible with that is the best approach, rather than all these very specific things for very specific situations. Let's have a look at the overall asymmetrical cut. There were 9 players, and there was only 4 decks here total, 4 different decks. So we have 3 Mega Absol, we have 3 Dusk, 2 Zard, and just 1 Gholdengo as well. As did I say 3 Zard? Yeah, 2 Zard and 1 Gholdengo to be our 9 decks. Also really cool to see that there was 1 player from Hong Kong and 4 Japanese players in our asymmetrical cut. So a very varied number of nations here, which is really cool to see. And it's just great to see more representation from these regions that we don't often get to showcase, because they're obviously not in the TPC sort of circuits. So whenever we can align Japanese metagame as well as their like tournament structures, I think that's a direction that I would like love to see. But always awesome to see some of these names. Obviously, Ryuki, someone who we've seen come over in Europe and the US before. Slightly easier flight to get to Brisbane, but also coming away with that victory and lost zoning an invite away from an Aussie, unfortunately. But here we are. Let's have a look at some of the Absol then. And like I kind of mentioned, people had got away from the Cornerstone, just accepting that Dengo has evolved already. So instead, there's the Machinations and the Airy in here to try and snipe some key trainer cards. Obviously, the main one on people's mind is the Superior, because with Jamming and... with Lively and Bravery, as well as Claw of Darkness and Airy, if you can hit enough, you can still be tough to get through. At least that's the mentality. Alternatively, you can still do the Claw of Darkness, get rid of some Turos, and have the Clutch Trap as well at times. So I think you do have still a couple avenues here. It's just like a tough ask to still get through that matchup. And I think, looking at Ryuki, only faced 1 Dengo, but was able to win it. And it was also against Jordan, who's like a really experienced, strong player. So it's a good win, but still a tough matchup, I would say. But definitely still doable. And the deck still feels like more streamlined when you get to cut the Ogerpon, so that's like a small bonus. You don't have to play the weird one of fighting, and you can just play a slightly more streamlined Pokemon count, which is really good because you immediately trolley out 6 straight away, right? So, or trolley out 5 of your board immediately, and then you just draw into less like bricky mons as well. So a nice sort of side grade for the Absol that seems to continue. Leighton was still playing the Ogerpon. This is a very different build. This is the Stamp build, so much more similar to the Fernandez build, where you're going for some Town Stores rather than Livelies to give you better access towards the Energize, which is kind of good. It does have the EXP share in here. You're probably only expecting 1 proc off this, but there you go. Has the 2 E-Switch in here as well. Obviously helps with the synergy of Penny. And the E-Hammer is becoming more and more standard for Mist Energy in the Mirror and in Zard, and sometimes in other stuff as well, so that's a nice inclusion to see. We also have Taisei here, also going for a similar build. It has the Watchtower, which is very curious. Obviously, it has just the 1 Kang, leaning into it a little bit less, but also seeing, Blood Moon's such a big part of this deck as well. Surprised to see the Watchtower, but maybe it's a recognition that Charizard's a tough matchup. Did they face any Zard? Yes, and they tied. Hetty went all the way. What's Hetty doing out in Brisbane? Why has Hetty gone to Brisbane and not to Europe? I've exposed him. That's crazy. Okay. Has the Scrapper in here as well. So maybe some acknowledgement that Guardy's tough if they go crazy with their tools. Did manage to beat the Guardies they face, which is pretty impressive. Let's have a look at the Dusks. I think, honestly, I'm just going to scoot through this really quickly, because most of the Dusks I've seen are really simple. Sotaro, I should say, playing the double Jacques rather than any Brock or Hilda is the only real takeaway surprise here. But the other 2 lists from Max and Brent were the more traditional couple Hilda in the list to help out. and more of the same that you would expect. Nothing too outlandish from these builds whatsoever. All looking very solid. Let's see the two Zard builds. We have Waipan here with the Town Store, which is kind of a curious include. Obviously, it does help the TM Evo. And I mean, it is your A-Spec as well, so more search for the A-Spec with the 2 Arven as well. That's something. I guess you need some sort of bounce towards jamming, so a total count of 2 Stadium makes sense. I'm surprised to see not 2 Artisan, but I suppose with double call for Family Pidgey, you say that that's fine. Has the Shaman to respect the Terror Box, has the Klefki, so you can still get around the Duck and still blast off. Has the Chi-Yu to respect Dengo. Like, a lot of respect in the deck for a lot of stuff. Only hit 1 Guardy, but was able to... Oh, sorry, Guardy's okay. It's the Dragon Dust that's harder. Yeah, lost and tied and tied. So walking away with ties, I think, is ultimately a pretty good outcome. Like, if you can make that close, that's a pretty good deal. Then we have Shun's list. I think just a few fewer tech basic mons, but more or less the same idea. Also with the Town Store, so maybe it's more popular than I give it credit. No missed energy in that build, but very similar approach. And then we do have Jordan's Gholdengo. What I do like about Jordan's list, so choosing not to play any respect to Cornerstone, I think that's an acknowledgement that, like, if Absol's not even playing it anymore, why should I put it in my list? Like, yes, you're going to get done by some Cornerstone stuff, but ultimately it's so much less popular that you can get away with the space and hope that other people do the teching for you. There's also the Lana's Aid in the deck, which is, I suppose, like a 5th superior in a lot of situations, and is like jelly-proof or Budu or Friddish-proof in the late game. So that's kind of interesting. Ultimately looking pretty streamlined. No Tool Scrapper, which I think is a good inclusion at the moment, but we're still able to overcome a couple Guardy regardless. I suppose Guardy has to, like, respect the fact that you can play Scrapper anyway, so they're probably trying to play around it as long as they can anyway. So again, I feel like Jordan's done this thing where it's like, you use the previous lists from previous weeks and say, like, people are going to answer Cornerstone for me. Guardies aren't going to play into Scrapper because it's in the list, and it just allows Jordan to play the more streamlined, like, maximum draw build instead, and say, like, yeah, I'll let people play around stuff I don't even have, which is like a really nice thing for the Dengo to be able to do. Like, a really streamlined build from Jordan looks very good to me. Let's see, outside of the ASIM, any other, like, highlight lists. Is there anything wacky that we have going on? Well, a Slowking made top 32, so that's definitely spicy. Charlie with the Gigas Conk, Annihilate, and of course the spread from Kieran that can be potentially devastating. Has the Trolley in here. Has the Lilies, of course, which is like the biggest upgrade of the lot, I would say. Lily definitely helps out. I'm surprised there's no Gumshoes, though. My boy Gumshoes that can work over the Academy at night and mean you're not limited to just the 4. I suppose the downside of Gumshoes is board space, and it can just be like picked off and whatnot, and then you're left with nothing. So you still probably would need some amount of academies, but definitely a cool concept. And to be fair, who knows? With Wonder Patch, this could be real. You never know. Let's see the losses. Lost to a Dragon Dusk, even with the Duck, which is a bit awkward. Tied a Kang, lost a Terror Box, lost a Grim. I mean, there's definitely going to be inconsistencies. I think Grim, I can see why that would be tough. Your Pokemon that have to sit in play have abilities, and you do rely on the multi-prizes to draw you into the game a lot of the time, so I can see that being a thing, but yeah, it's still definitely a terrifying deck. Like, turn 2 Kyurem is still, like, devastating, right, for some decks. Pretty cool to see that get the top 32. Any other big takeaways? The highest placing Ceruledge was outside of 32. Yeah, it was a 38 here. And not many of them either. Really sporadic. There was a top 128 Chomp. A Zorro. There really weren't many Zorros, right? That's the highest placing Zorro. That's a pretty... I mean, it's not popular, of course, but we have seen some recent results for it, so somewhat of a surprise, maybe. let's jump over to Gdansk now, the larger tournament. 1675 players. I was also in attendance for this tournament. I did make phase 2. We will, at the end of the video, very briefly talk about my run, but it definitely goes downhill pretty quick. So, yeah, a bit of a salt story. But let's start with the metagame over in Gdansk. Of course, this was a really cool case study of a 1-week development in the meta, because we just had Lille, where it was a Dragger Dusk finals in the previous week. There was also some high-profile players having great results with Zoroark. So there's this strange dichotomy of like, oh, Zoroark's popping up and more dark stuff is popping up, so is Guardian the better place because Dragger's just done well, or is it a worse place because there's so much dark around and Zoro, once again, like proving itself to be more relevant? Also, you know, in Lille, it was when everyone came out with their knives for Absol and being like, I do not want to lose to that deck. I saw all sorts of Hooper EX and other like tech inclusions and like fighting stuff to get through Kangaskhan. More grass stuff, more like iron leaves and whatnot to deal with the Absol as well. So it felt like everyone was more than prepared for Absol in Lille. And then the question mark was like, oh, how teched are people going to be in Gdansk? Well, we have our answer in terms of the metagame, where Absol was now sub 5%. I think it was already, in Lille, to be fair, I think it was sub 5% as well. So it wasn't that popular of a choice. It was around that 5% from memory. But yeah, it wasn't that popular. Instead, the most popular deck, if you group together, was still Gardevoir at that 14.5%. So really the same thing that I've been echoing, where Gholdengo, when you combine them all, they're still the most popular. The only decks that get close to around that 10% threshold. I think the difference in this case is that there was more Gholdengo overall, where 10.6% was just the Lunatone build, and then there was also a handful playing the Joltik build and the no rocks build either, even less so, just like that 1%. So something to bear in mind there, that Dengo seems to be the stage 1, and the 2 top stage 2s are still Pot and Guardy still tussling it out. But there is Grimmsnarl at 7%, Ceruledge at 6.6, still sort of holding on in there, which, again, it's one of these things where, like, I get it, because it's a fast, easy-to-play deck that is also good into Dengo. So, like, there's reasons to like the Ceruledge, but also it just really is lacking those high finishes. It's got a very poor Gardevoir matchup, a poor Zard, a poor Grim, a poor Terrabox. Like, the only thing that's a boast is Dengo. Yeah, I mean, maybe you can call Zoroark a boast, but not really, because it's not that popular. Having an okay Dragger Dusk is, like, whatever, really, because it's still not that strong. I don't know, it's a few events now where it's not been great. I have to feel like it's going to be falling off the top 6 in terms of play rates. Even though Gholdengo did really well over the weekend, I still feel like if you're going to do that, like, let's look to Charizard instead. Well, maybe not, because it's very important to Dengo. Okay, let's look at Dengo's actual worst matchups then. That's probably the right way to do it. What's Dengo bad against? Okay, it actually is only Ceruledge. It's good against everything else. It's bad against Terrabox, maybe. Maybe that's the target. It's very poor into Flareon, which we'll come to see. That's so funny that I picked Zard, and then it's like, oh, it's actually bad into Zard. I guess I'm just going off historical when there was Chi-Yu and whatnot. But maybe it's more... well, yeah, more Dengo favoured these days. Have we looked at the conversions? I don't think we have just yet. What was I talking about? Still the popularity of decks, yeah. Terrabox, Mega Absol, Zoroark. Again, like a tiny bump in play, but not a huge amount, really. Let's look at the conversion then. I think the big winners over in EU was that Gholdengo. And I think we just saw the data looked insane, actually, where it was looking really good and really well-rounded across the board in terms of its matchup. So you can see why, just being a ruthlessly consistent deck that has great play into the other top 3, actually. It's also decent into the Grimmsnarl. I think the more we've seen the double Turo plus Picnic build, the more you can see that being a tough matchup for the Grim, because you have ways to get around Clutch, as well as plenty of healing to get around Devo for the most part. Yeah, there's our matchups way better than I would have expected on paper. So yeah, you're really good into the top stuff. You're also very, very good into Absol. So you do have a couple freebies here, or close to free matchups, and you're very consistent at what you're trying to achieve. And now you respect Cornerstone as well, so you don't just get cheesed out of games with random tech cards that we saw, you know, since Worlds, basically. So that's looking like really, really strong overall. I would expect it to still remain pretty popular. Outside of that, Terrabox had a pretty good time of things. The Jelly build still doing pretty solid here. The Absol Kang generally having a good tournament. Joltit Box having a decent conversion. Flareon, again, not that many players, so I'd expect it to have a fairly good conversion because it's like a tough deck to pilot. So if you're playing it, it's because you're good with it, I suppose. But yeah, also having a good event overall. Let's have a look at the asymmetrical top cut again. Your heart goes out to our 17th place Bubble, Marcin here. Same as in Lille, where it was Drew Stevenson last time. And by the way, you also have to shout out Drew again because he bubbled at 33rd. So he's lost about 2k minimum in the last weeks just to bubbles, which, again, you're just so unfortunate. But Marcin with the Greninja EX Pidgeot Dusk build, sort of in the same shell, or similar shell as Zard. It's also incorporating the Clef Key. Very cool deck. Obviously, would have been cool to see it. I think the obvious risk of Greninja is your Guardy matchup isn't great. There were some wins in here against Gardevoir, but a tiny loss as well. A loss to the Grimmsnarl. But again, this is definitely like a cheesy deck, right? With the blast into barrage plays. You can be flexible. You can search the deck for a couple of pieces. So there's a lot of moving parts, but also you have a lot of ways to go into the deck and find pieces that you need. So you can see why it's a threat in the game, and maybe it would have been put more on the map if it made the ASIM, but I still expect it to be really low play rate overall. But it's at least a cool one to see. Which means our actual ASIM was, 4 Gholdengo. We have 2 Flareon, 2 Grimm, 2 Enzoro, 1 Absol, 2 Zard, 1 regular Guardy, 1 Jelly Guardy, and only 1 Dusk. So even though we've been saying it's the tug of war of Guardy and Dusk, in this case there was only 3 of those combined, and it was really Dengo having a really, really great showing, which in turn meant that the Flareons went further in the event because they battered through some solid matchups. Let's have a look at Daniel Magda's winning list first of all then. And a slight adaptation from Drew's 17th place list from last week, where it's still the secret box build, but a little bit more streamlined, I think, because it's chosen to cut the Turbo Energize, saying that, like, there's less Cornerstone anyway, and if I really have to face it, I can still slow power up the more while, especially with, like, Picnic that could heal you if a Cornerstone's trying to punch it or something. So I think you have the time to slow build the attacker in the matchup, especially when you're Dengo, right, and you have the 4 boss, so you can make it rain before while you slow build them more while and still have pressure. So I think it's fine to not play the Energize and instead just say it's a 1 space that's enough to respect the matchup, and maybe in other matchups you can put down more while and attach to it as well, and that can also be like a nice late game Iono proofer for you, where rather than having to get multiple superiors in the late game, you just need to attach an extra energy and win the game. So that's looking pretty promising. Nothing too much going on. No Scrapper again in the list, so a couple of the Dengos are foregoing Scrapper, and it's good. I know I faced a couple people with Scrapper over the weekend, but it looks like, again, it's the classic, like, oh, if you threaten Scrapper in the list, people have to play around Scrapper as the Guardy. So then they're sort of limited in their plays regardless. Let's look at Christian's list in top 4. Similar vibes going on here. Does have the same Lana's Aid that we saw Jordan Palmer play. Choosing to play no respect to Cornerstone, I think, is a calculated risk that you can get away with at the moment. Again, that comes into question as the format develops. Like, will there be a turning point where it's worth playing the Cornerstones again? Maybe. If you're playing Absol Kang, but we'll have to sort of see about that. That's the Premium Power Pro combo in this build as well. This is a very, like, heavily tilted Gong base, though. Like, just the 1 Poffin means that Christian really cares way more about getting the rocks first, and the gimmies will come, is kind of the idea with Christian's approach. We have Nicoline playing, I think, the same list as Drew from the previous week. Looking very solid, or at least very similar build. And Pascal playing the Erica's Invitation Power Pad package, as well as Hop's Cram as an additional single prize attacker. I suppose this is, like, similar to the Morwell in that if you really have to, you can, like, Cosmic Beam and Hop's Cram, give yourself a chance to knock out a Cornerstone over a few attacks, and then you still have the Ericas anyway, if you really have to. So it's respected in a different way, and every now and then Erica's will like cheese you a win, which is kind of funny. Let's have a look at the Flareons then. I think Emma gave a great account of herself as one of the top players in Europe, as well as an absolute expert with Flareon. She, in a few of the games on stream, put on like a real show of what it takes to do really well with Flareon. Now, the reason why Flareon's not all that popular in the meta just generally is that it does have a pretty poor Dusk matchup, so it's a calculated risk deck, no doubt, like comparing it to something like Terrabox, which plays not that similarly, but still has that same knocks out approach. Terrabox is like a much closer Dragapult matchup, whereas this one is like the sack matchup of Flareon. But you then have a lot of good matchups to sort of back that up and have the payoff for this archetype. And we know that Emma's been playing it for a while. She does a lot of active tweeting about the deck and talking about her changes and decision making within the list. So it's definitely really experienced with the deck, and that shines through in the stream games, right, where she was stringing together really complex combos, but you could see that she'd gone through the motions before and had already pre-planned all of that. And one of the main things you'll always see from Emma as she plays this, like I played against her in person playing this deck at Cups as well, is that she is very diligent at getting the early Pidge plus Fez down so that you're not just trying to punt off an INO and have pieces. You're going to always have the backup of at least Quick Search or Flip the Script and Jewel Seekers open. Like, he's always trying to get floating hoots no matter what combo she's doing, because as we know in the late game, this deck can just like take the game away from an opponent, even if they hand disrupt you, by still piecing together like 4 or 5 piece combos. They have the Briar, they have the like instant way to evolve up into either EX stage 1. They have the acceleration of Trumpet and E-Switch and Crystal, so you're not locked towards Crispin later on. Ideally, you're burning charging to set up prizes as well, so like, or set up attackers so you can Briar and not be forced into the Crispin. There's a lot going on, but Emma's definitely like an expert of the archetype, and she did get fairly fortunate with her run, like hit a lot of Dengos, right? But she did beat the one Dust that she hit, which is fortunate. Also came up against a few Gardevoirs, and Shield debates that it's a really good matchup, but I would argue it's very close. Let's see, actually. Can we go to the... let's go metagame matchups for the Flareon deck. So overall, slightly unfavored into Guardy, but the 28% Dust, like you... I feel like it's a really tough choice to take this to a tournament when you know that Dusk is going to be really popular and was just the finals of the previous week. Like, you gotta be pretty brave to take the Flareon. But in this case, it paid off for not just Emma, also paid off for Thomas, who had also a really good time in Lille, to be fair. Again, playing a very similar approach to Emma. I mean, she has been pretty much a pioneer of the archetype for a few months now, so it's not surprising to see a similar shell. I think just having the 180 hit pointer. But there you go. Let's have a look at the Grimmsnarls. We have Arthur in top 4. Really nice list, very clean with the 4 Rovs of the supporters that have 2 boss, 2 countercatcher, which is pretty commonplace these days. Has the Petch EX plus your own Clutchy Voltol, so you're not getting clutched yourself. This can also be a late game attack if you really need it to be, but you have the clutch to slow people down. It has the Psyduck as the tech choice to respect the Dusk that little bit more. Let's see how many Dust they've faced. Was it only 2? It really, I mean, I keep saying only, but again, I have to reframe my mindset in that this format is just so wide, you're going to face all sorts of stuff. But it seems like, you know, going 2-0 against the Dusk is valuable. I feel like this slot is between this and maybe Shaman as the slots. Really nice list from Arthur, very streamlined and clean though. Like, the one candy can look like a risk, but you're so heavily tied to Evo anyway that I think you get away with it. You basically only ever play 1 in the game regardless, but you only get punished if you prize the 1 candy, I suppose. The other list was from Mike. A slight variation where it's the Shaman over the Duck. Maybe a tweak to the amount of Terrabox that were cut in Lille. But also Iron Bundle, which is like good for Mirror, good for other matchups as well. Still sticking with the 1 candy. Has the gear rather than 4th Iono or 2nd boss. So a little bit cheekier on space here. But ultimately the same dynamic going on within both of the lists. Mike also debated having the Petulant and Okie Dogie inclusions, because obviously I spoke to him in Lille as he was working. But yeah, it's a back-to-back top 16 finish for Mike in his first 2 regional championships. He's played ICs before, but as for regionals, getting back-to-back top 16s in your first 2 that you've played in, he's making it look like easy work, which is really, really impressive stuff. So long may that continue. We have the couple Zoros again, like just completely outdoing its overall metagame play rates, but because there are some really top level pilots here in Cal and Vinny, they're just going really far in the tournaments. And both players had the inclusion of Mega Absol, which is really cool. You already have E-Switches and Janine to try and support it, regardless. So, like, why not? Why not have the potential to cape up an Absol, an Iono, and claw your way towards victory? Like, I feel like that's definitely a really cool idea. Still sticking with the Watchtowers, which still seem really valuable right now. I do think you're kind of sacking the Dengo matchup. That's the only thing that, like, worries me. Losses were to, a Dengo. Still losing to a Zard. I know Cal on the day said that he got quite unfortunate against both Zard pilots, where he was like Claw of Darknessing, and then they still were able to top deck into like a combination of like a flurry of cards basically coming out. So I do think this is a really strong build of the deck. Absol is like a good enough answer that you don't need the Okie Dokie, and you just say that this card is more versatile in other matchups anyway. And to be fair, you may end up using this like a good amount, I would expect. But yeah, Zoro, it feels like there was a time where there was Toad Scroll in, now both builds are like cutting it and just saying that you probably lose the Dengo, I suppose, but hey ho. Here's also Vinny's build. I think just a small change, no PP up, just double Janine, but otherwise really, really similar 60s between both of the ASIM Zoros, which is pretty impressive stuff. Let's have a look at Kato's Absol Kang. Similar approach to those in Brisbane. No Eri this time, so again, a little bit dodgy into the Dengo. Have all of them fallen to Dengos? No, Kato actually fell to only Emma. That's funny. Only lost to one player, and it was in round 3 and then round 15. That's cool. Dodge the Dengos. That's got to feel good. That's the calculated risk right now. I've said that about a lot of decks, though, right? Like, every deck I've mentioned, it's like, oh, they only hit X of their bad matchup, but every deck is only facing it, like, once or twice in the tournament based on the metagame. Let's have a look at Hermione, who's had another great result with Charizard. They did well in Lille as well with it, so really impressive. It's the Mezagoza in here, no artisan at all, just straight up gambling. I don't know, it feels really rough being like, I don't get it, but I really just don't. Why would you not play one Artisan, one Meza for the box option, you know? You really want to go wide on board. You're playing double core for Family Pidgey anyway, like... Why would you not try and just go full board? Because it feels like you want Pidgey, Charm, Dusk, plus some like space for one thing. So why would you not have the peace of mind from high rolling your Arven or like attracting into Arven or something? I don't know. But it's the same shenanigans that we've seen before with the Klefki coming in with the Jet package, Defiance Band rather than the Max belt and just saying the box is busted, which I do think is pretty true. Alexi playing the stamp build of Zard though. Has the Ho-Oh in here to respect the Cornerstone / Crustal matchup. This has the cheeky Town Store on the list, as well as the couple Arven. I guess that is something of a finesse, right? You're trying to finesse the TM Evo, so the extra Town Store is cool. Neither of the builds playing any Artisan though, just going with Mezagoza in both counts is a real surprise. What's been the undoing of the Zard here? Oh, it was a mirror that they ended up losing to. I want to look at Zard's overall spread right now. What does all these shenanigans say about Zard? Like, is it still just trying to dodge Pult? Oh my god, the Pult is atrocious. Even with... Yeah, I mean, Pult is just so bad. Dengo also looking poor. Would you rather play Zard or Flareon? When you see these stats, you're like, would I play Zard or Flareon? Or neither? That is terrifying. Right, what else have we not seen? We've not looked at the Guardies yet. We have Max with a turbo build. Has the Town Store in here as well, over third Arven. It's probably fine. You do want to have bounces to Jamming Tower, right? Maybe third Arven's just better because box is cracked. I don't know, that feels unorthodox. If you're playing a third stadium, you're almost always thinking it's Garden, right? So the fact that it's not is a bit of a surprise. Otherwise, it's the usual shell that you'd expect from a Turbo Guardi. Jamie playing the Jelly build, though. Playing no Evo, triple Candy, and one Curlier. Kind of aggressive build. I mean, the Candy approach is fine in this deck because your Finnish bullies Budu, so like they can't do that against you anyway. So maybe you get away with it. But just one Curlier still makes me a bit queasy, but Pulse can still scam you. What were the losses in here? Lost to Zoro, you'd expect. Lost to Grim, you'd kind of expect. Lost to Absol and tied to Absol, so wasn't a problem against the. They faced one Dragon Dusk. That was it. So yeah, no real reflection on the Budu off sort of thing. Just the one Bravery Charm. I do like making space for 2 Charm, but I also like making space for the 1 Evo. I don't know. Maybe it's okay just because Finnish is busted and you can punish or put off anyone from going Budu anyway just by representing early Finnish. I keep clicking back, but it's not going back. Okay. Let's have a look at the final list then, Julius, on the Dragon Dusk. And it's the straightforward list that we all come to know. Nothing too spicy, so let's look down further afield. First, I want to look at the Will's Joltit box, just because I piloted Joltit box to this tournament to a Phase 2 finish. We'll get there eventually. But a much better result here, which seems to be copy-pasting a similar approach to Kasiraga's finish, with the Brox in here. Also, for some reason, no Air Balloon. I will never understand no Air Balloon in this deck. It makes every Arven turn, like, a guaranteed turn 1 Jolting Charge. So the fact that that's not in the deck is really surprising. But the Magneton is something I didn't play, but I think in hindsight, especially when we see my matchups and what I lost to, I think it probably might be worth it just for the amount of Dengo that I personally hit and how good Dengo is. The fact that Dengo is very capable at bossing on 2 and taking out any 2 prizer, like, it's probably game over if they take out your hands. But if you have Magneton, you can have a backup plan for that eventuality. And then if they take the Joltik, you just don't explode anyway, right? Because if they take out the Joltik, you've just won the game regardless. So I think my oversight was Magneton, like, only comes up in certain matchups, but I think that's also kind of fine, honestly. So I don't know. I'm now pro Magnet after not playing it myself for the tournament, but I cannot get on board with no Air Balloon. That's like a no-brainer inclusion, to be honest. But an elevated support account to the usual builds. Like, I just played 4-4-4 supporters and 4 gear. So Brock is like a pretty welcome sight, to be fair. Congrats to Will as well on the placement. Possibly the spiciest thing was Stian's list of Turbo Ogopon, where you have Crispin, Crystal, and 4 E-Switch, saying that that's enough for you to fuel either Torrential Pumps or Pikachu or Iron Hands as well. Iron Hands being a bit of a dreamer one, but it is certainly still possible with the acceleration that you have and the E-Switch shenanigans going on. Very cool, very aggressive list. It's like an Owlless Terror box in a way, and you just say that Squawk and Lily is enough, and that sometimes can be the case. I definitely want to experiment with this deck a little bit more, where you still boast the good type coverages of Grass and Psychic. You have really good prize cheese mechanics with Amp and Pump, and then you have generic high damage output of Pika. You also have Persimmon, which is a tech card for Kangaskhan you'd have to expect, with the coordinated throwing, doing 20x your basic Pokemon in play. But ultimately, it's not far away from like a Rondo sort of thing. I mean, it is, but it's a fighting guy, and it can also help you get through Cornerstone, I suppose. So I think that's pretty promising. Yeah, I mean, we've seen online some of the Turbo Ogre stuff do shenanigans, and I think it's something to explore. Let's have a look at the losses and the awkward matchups here. Losing to a Gardy, losing to Zoro. I mean, I guess if you play Iron Leaves in the... How many switch outs does this play? Yeah, not enough is the answer. You can get clutch trapped with this build. Oh, no, you can't because you have the patch. Maybe it's just you don't have enough, like, good grass guys immediately because you only play 5 grass. You can't actually leave Shower through Zoro easy enough. I was thinking, like, maybe Leaves, similar to just a regular Joltit box or something like that, would do. Or a regular Terra box would do. But yeah, really spicy list there. We have more of the same, really. There is Crostal in here. We got a lot of the usual suspects. There was Jan playing Mega Venusaur, and I want to say this is the person that was also wearing a Bulbasaur plush on there, or a Bulbasaur hat on their head in day 2. There was definitely someone playing Venusaur with the full like t-shirt, hat, sleeves, everything, plushies and combo. If that's you, Jan, shout out, because that is awesome seeing that you finally get to play a Pokemon that you really enjoy and ended up having a great result with it. That's very, very cool to see. You do have to scroll quite far down if you want to get to my list, unfortunately. My overall result was 661 on the day. And that's starting from a 5-1-1 finish, which is really awkward. I played a really straightforward Joltik box. Like I said, I probably would look to incorporate Magnet. And the spaces are probably like cut Mute back to 1. And maybe cut Ultra Ball to 3. Or possibly cut Psychic to 1. And say that you can... Psychic to 1's annoying, because I did attack with Eon Blade into Clutch once as well. Maybe it's an energy cut, or maybe it is like gear to 3 or something. But I played a really like straightforward list, no thrills whatsoever. And ultimately it served me well in phase 1, where I tied a Jelly Guardy, lost to one Gholdengo, and then in my final round lost to a Terra Box that was playing Volky X, which I think you just say is a really bad matchup. I was absolutely flabbergasted when it was an Iron Bundle. I thought I was being smart going into my Pikachu that had a bunch of energy on, and then they went Dual Seek for Brock Switch and completely ruined my life by finding a Volk and getting it in and out. So that was fun. I think I just say that's a really poor matchup for me based on the list. And then my other losses were to 2 more Gholdengo. Now, I do feel like I was getting a little bit high rolled, because the matchup data says it's basically a 50-50 for Joltik versus Dengo. But a lot of the situations where just turn 2, they had boss plus 6 or 7 energy to take out Bravery Charmed hands. That happened a couple of times to me in the tournament. Or just taking 2 on like a Miraidon or a like Mew or something like that, just to initiate the race. And I feel like if the Dengo initiates that race, I never have the disruption to stop them. So I do think this matchup is genuinely like quite poor, but I also feel like I got high rolled a little bit. Like I know Zen was playing the trolley build, and I won the flip, made them go first, and in both cases they went first and opened trolley, and then immediately they're going into like cycle, and then next turn they have bonus, 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 and they're gonna find their combo if you give them that amount of draw power. So I feel like I lowered a little bit into this matchup because I think it's closer. But I don't really know the reparations. Like, I don't know what makes it that much better outside of the Magnet. This is what I want to come back to, really, is that if they take that 2-prize KO, especially on hands, like, it's game over, right? Because you can't really catch up from there. But you can, if you make the Magnet and you build, like, Pika Pika, they can at least still boss KO your Miraidon, and you still have a way into the game. If you, like, spread between your Pikas and then still have... like a way to rebuild a lot more reliably than just like crispening the rest of the game away and somehow like not drawing into your energy and whatnot. Alternatively, you can still like remake a hands and have a hands into their Soul Rock, because like if they whiff the gust, you need to represent the hands, because otherwise you can't punish them just Soul Rocking through Joltik. So you need to make hands at least to an extent. Like you have to put minimum 2 energy on it so you can threaten Crispin from your jolting charge. So I found that really awkward. And then my final round, where I had to at least tie, I think I really had to win my last round to not get 256, which I did. I saw a Abra straight away, so I knew that I was like losing instantly, which is a real shame. But I think a little bit of like matchup variance being awkward, although I did hit 2 Zoro on the day, and Zoro was like a really strong matchup for me. Grimmsnarl was also a really good matchup, so I hit a few of the good matchups, but hitting this much Dengo, especially in the spot where they were just having it on turn 2 a lot, I feel like I got a little bit high rolled in some instances, but I can't complain too much. I played a very simple deck that's probably outside the top 10 of strong decks anyway, just so that I could amp you very much through people and have fast games. So it's in a way my own fault. I think my highlight of the day was actually my loss to Arnie in Phase 2. That was a really cool game where he took his hedges, he took risks in order to go lone Pult or Pult +1 bench, so I couldn't Clefairy KO him. And that was a way that he could play around both Mawile and Clefairy, but it meant that like his early game was really shaky, and he had to just play simply from his hand and his prize cards and say that the cards he drew from those would get him the way towards win. And that happened both times, and especially in the second game, he led Latias EX, so he could only get one Dreepy out. He went Budu, Dreepy, one Lati, and in order to play around my Clefairy KO, he had to just go one Cloak and hedge that I didn't have Boss on turn 2 with Amp. And it just so happened that after he Iono'd me and went Budu, I didn't have a physical Boss, and from there he could win the game. So that was cool to like watch it play out in front of me. The funny thing is that it's all my opponent doing the cool stuff and not me, and I was just sort of like a victim to it. And the best thing I can do then is like build a Blood Moon and hope he can't Blood Moon plus Countercatcher me for the final prizes or whatever. But yeah, I thought it was really cool to watch that play out, and it was enjoyable at least to see someone play very differently into the matchup and be like rewarded for it. They would have been completely smoked if I'd played Iono, but sort of hedged that I didn't and that it's not in the popular builds right now, which is definitely the case. But yeah, that's Jolted Box. I don't regret it too much. Like, I'm very much a jack of all trades, master of none in the format, so I felt uncomfortable bringing a Guardi or a Pult myself. I feel like those are the best decks. I easily could have played Cash in Hand. I easily could have played Dengo myself, and maybe in hindsight Dengo was the better choice because it had a really, really good weekend. But most of my testing had been with Absol Kang, and I felt like I wanted to just play something simple and straightforward. So happy to get the Phase 2, but really had a languishing Day 2, which is a little bit awkward for me. But yeah, that's the tournaments. I think the takeaways really from like the metagame is that even with Dengo doing so well, I can't see Ceruledge holding its place too much. I still feel like it's fairly untenable. We're maybe getting back into the cycle of Dengo's cutting the cornerstone respect so that it could be good again, which is something to keep track of. Maybe it's only in time for LAIC for that to be correct, because the Absol Kang are kind of just taking the loss right now. But as we've seen with Absol winning and Flareon getting second and even Gholdengo winning, right, that takes a sack matchup into Ceruledge, like all of these decks, you kind of just have to say that you're going to lose one or two of these, but the format's so wide that you can more or less get away with it, provided you hit your matchup less than 4 times, which I did, which meant I did terrible. So that's it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for another one. Cheers.